business is hard. It is really hard because whatever industry you're in, you're figuring out from scratch. And if you've got competitors, you have to figure out how to differentiate. It is incredibly, incredibly hard. And so this is why I guess my respect for CEOs and business owners is just through the roof, because nobody. It's not as if you can go online. This is how you plant you plant tomatoes. You know what I mean? Everything is just from scratch, and everything has to be figured out.
Welcome to The Roll Call, the podcast where we dive into the roles that define us. I'm your host, John Glahn. On each episode, we explore the journeys of people discovering their true roles in life, business, and beyond. Get ready for inspiring conversations about finding purpose and authenticity. Let's roll the roll call. All right, welcome everyone to The Roll Call. I'm John Glahn. I have with me Pete Thomas.
Present. Roll call. I'm present.
There you go. Actually, look at this. Just feeding right into it.
There you go.
Absolutely. So all are present. Let's get started.
We're present.
Yeah. So Pete Thomas is a Vistage chair,
yes,
an executive coach.
Yes, sir.
As many have heard through here, I've been in Vistage for 8+ years now, and Pete came into my life through my chair, Bob Holland, the great Bob Holland.
Absolutely.
And so I've got to spend quite a bit of time with you because you were working with Bob and your group came in with us.
Right.
And I've always appreciated your candor, your desire to help people. It pours out of you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to get the right forum to tell your story and see how we can get more people to come work with you.
Oh, I appreciate it. And obviously to come work with you as well. I think, this work and what this work is it's helping executives, helping CEOs and business owners go to that next level. I was attracted to this and I had no idea that Vistage even existed. I was CEO of a family-owned software company. It wasn't my family. Mm-hmm. And I was prepared for the seat, right? I had an executive coach out of Colorado that was an amazing guy, Joe Anderson. And he was just phenomenal. And in certain areas I was prepared for. The thing that I was not prepared for was the family conflict, right? That existed. And so that threw me off, right? But I wish I'd had at that time, had a group of peers that would have helped me walk through that journey. And so when I was introduced to Vistage, and obviously this is not a Vistage commercial in any way, but really what it is I believe that every executive needs, 2 or 3 things. Number 1, you should have an executive coach. Number 2, you should have a group of peers that you bounce things off of. If you're business, you should have an operating system of some type that helps you to standardize some of the communications and the way that the organization runs. So, Vistage, like I said, when I was introduced to it, and I can remember the very first day I walked into a room with all the executives in the room, and they were challenging each other. And I fell in love with it. Now, it may have been because I'd been traumatized from where I was, right? Where the challenging inside the family was at times, physical, I'll say this, right? And family members who would punch holes in walls. And I'm like, how are we making a decision based on that? What are we doing? What are we doing? Let's make a decision based on the numbers. But it was just a great environment, of course, for me coming into this. The other side of when you have an executive coach or an executive peer group, you'll have what you really need, which I believe are some mentors. And for me, you mentioned earlier, your Vista chair, Bob Holland, I call him the Jedi Master, right? Yeah. He's been doing it for 20+ years and started 4 businesses and all of that. So it was almost an ideal situation for me to walk into. And I had to make some tough choices. At the time I had stepped away from the company that I was running and had gone back to school for a short period of time. And then from there was offered a position to be CEO of an energy company. And so it was a small company. The guy was going to fully fund it and fund the salary for X number of years while we grew it. But again, when I was surrounded by a group of executives, men and women, who were willing to challenge and be challenged and be held accountable, it's like, wow, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to serve executives in this way. So, I just fell into my calling.
Yeah, I want to go back, as you said, you don't want to make this a Vistage commercial. I think that's absolutely fine and dandy for it to be, because again, I owe so much of my professional development to Vistage.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is, one, you can't discount, just like you had mentioned, you can't discount having a confidential, which is a word I want to put back in a confidential forum.
Yes.
To bounce things off of, to be real and honest where you're really struggling. Because
Absolutely.
when you're the solopreneur, when you're the CEO, or you have a partner, most of the time, no one else has the business experience to tell you one way or the other. You're the one that's being looked at to make the decisions. And if you don't have the experience, then because you can't have experience to everything.
That's right.
So, that is, I think, the real power of Vistage. And again, and in order to be in Vistage, not a rite of passage, but a bit of it is the vulnerable part. Absolutely. To understand, hey, I don't know it all.
Absolutely.
If you come in knowing it all, that's why there aren't many know-it-alls in Vistage.
That's right.
Because if you did, then you wouldn't become, you think you did.
You wouldn't fit.
And so I think that, and hopefully you get the right dynamic, which is a part of what you do to make sure that you're not mixing oil and water. You get people that will collaborate, that will call people on their shit, for lack of a better word.
And that's the role of a good facilitator, which is what a Vistage chair is. It's you're going to make sure that when there's oil here, okay, you need to change a little bit in the way you think. I'm pairing you with this group or this team what's inside the larger team, so that we can get the best out of you. And you need to be challenged on some certain things, right? And you're right. It's that group. There's something that's really different about a CEO who's willing to go into those rooms, to go into that environment and say, I don't know something, right? And you mentioned this earlier, right? And but I found that even executives who have a board of directors, you've got some ideas about, let's say, a strategy. You want to change and you want to grow, and this is the strategy by which you're going to grow. You can go to your board of directors, but what if you go to your board of directors and your board of directors, well, that's what we pay you for, figure it out. Yeah. Or they say, well, you tell us what direction, then we'll judge it. Being able to have a peer group that you can take this to in advance is powerful. I remember one of the meetings we were in last year, and you were helping one of the other members. They were working on their go-to-market strategy, right? And they had manufacturing issues, and you were helping them by putting things up on the board, and the group was adding things, and you were helping to contextualize it. That private advisory group is just, it's priceless to have some people who will challenge you, who will help you to think through. And I mean, when I mean things to think through, we deal with everything. And this is what I absolutely love. We were dealing with, in my last meeting, how do we compensate our key players, and what do we do with the flight risks? What do you do with folks that who may have invested early on, but you didn't have the right exit plan for them to get your equity back and all? Oh, it's just the challenges are numerous, right? But this is the thing that I love about the work, and this is what I've said and what I say to my group. I'm here with a bunch of executives, a bunch of CEOs, a bunch of business owners, and you generate revenue so that your employees can go pay their mortgages, so that they can go and save up for their kids' colleges and pay the light bill, right? And by the way, there's also your customers that you're providing a great service for. So I think part of my attraction to this role is my love of business in America, right? I was talking, so this is a random conversation I was having with someone yesterday, and they run the #1 talk radio station in Nigeria. So we're just having great conversation, and we happen to talk about homelessness. And then we were talking about homelessness in America, which is way different, right? And we went, and I was like, well, California has the largest percentage of homeless. And there's, I forget, like the budget for California homeless people it's like $3 billion a year, which is $42,000 a person, right? And I said, now that only happens if you have a country with amazing amount of wealth, that you're going to spend $42,000, and we know that it's not managed well, and so that's why the people are still homeless. But this is, and I said, now in America, in the Midwest here, we have these warming stations that people can go into, and it's not like you want anybody to be homeless. But if you're going to be homeless, this is what she said, well, the homeless people here had better be glad that there's no winter because they would get no help from the government, right? But that only happens because you have this combination in America of democracy and capitalism that work together, that it's just a beautiful thing. So I just have this love and this reverence for American business people because of the number of people that are employed and the number of lives that are changed by being able to work and generate salary. So I just have this love for the CEO also who sits in that seat.
Yeah, that's where we align.
Yeah.
Right? I'm doing some, in a similar path, right? We can raise the tide by working at the leadership team, right? That many more people. So we're definitely aligned there.
Come on. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're also aligned in this, as I mentioned, I believe that every CEO, every business, every CEO needs a coach or a mentor. You need a peer group, right? And you also need that operating system. I'll never forget, this is one of Bob Holland's famous teachings, the four stages or 4 levels of business. The first level is when you're the CEO and you do everything and everybody does everything.
Yep.
The second level is when you start to put those systems in place and the systems actually carry some of the weight. You start to put the policies and procedures and the way that you handle meetings. That second level allows you to then go to the third level, which is scaling, right? And then when you get to the fourth level, it's where you're known for the category, right? You're the Google or the Amazon of the world. But that first to second level, I'll never forget, it's an old school classic book, right? The E-Myth. And the E-Myth talks about, there's a difference from the person who bakes the cookies and the person who runs the shop where the cookies are baked, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes those get merged, and you need an operating system. You need to begin to think differently so that the CEO can then step out of the business, begin to think about the business, and begin to work on the business and come up with strategies, learn more about funding the business and finance. Do I bring on investors? Do I prepare the business to sell to private equity? And what does that look like, right? All that happens when the person who originally had the idea is able to elevate, go to that next level and begin to think differently. I believe it's a strategic coach. They have something in their methodology where you just spend a day thinking. Oh, wouldn't we all like to do that, right?
Yeah.
But John Maxwell talks about having his chair time, right? And so when I look at CEOs and the time that I spend with business owners, et cetera, your minds just work at a different level, right? And so I was a CEO, but I like to say it like this. It was the owner, right, who really thought differently. I could take what the owner came up with and optimize it to make it better. But there are people who literally come up with ideas from nothing. And I'm amazed at those people.
Same.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I can optimize, but to see something that does not exist, and people could love or hate Elon, but Elon Musk said, I am going to send a rocket to the moon and return it to Earth and reuse it. Oh, and by the way, NASA can't even do this. I am also, at the very same time, I'm going to create and manufacture an electric car. Oh, by the way, the big 3 can't even do that.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think on that level, right? And we know he's got, he may have challenges in terms of personality and all of that, but to think on that level, of course, what he is, if you had a chance to read his autobiography, or not auto, but his biography, and to learn, the critical piece of that was systems and having these number 2 people, these operating officers who allowed him to be unique in him, allowed him to operate the way that he is. But it's just, it's critical for business owners to understand, to go to that next level. We have to have a common language inside the organization. And that common language is around vision. It's around values. It's around our metrics. So I need an operating system. I have to have it.
He is not being paid for this advertisement.
We teach it and preach it, But here's the thing, the part of what we do is executive coach. The people who have these layers in place, the conversations are different. Like one of the things that I'm grateful to be able to do is there are folks who don't qualify for Vistage, right? And so I do some coaching with some of those folks. And it's, if you're going to get to this level, right? If we're going to get you to this level to where you qualify for a Vistage group based upon revenues, you got to have these 2 or 3 things in place. And it's without fail.
It only helps, right?
It only helps.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah.
Exactly right. Absolutely.
So back to one, thanks for the plug for operating systems.
Absolutely.
I completely agree.
Absolutely. That's right. That's why you're giving yourself to this work. Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You didn't just become CEO,
That's right.
right?
That's
So
right.
could we talk about a little bit of your journey to get to that point?
Yes. I would have the most unlikely journey. And what I mean by that is, was kind of a single operator. I did leadership training and development for approximately 10 years before I went and joined the company that I eventually became CEO of. But and this is one of the challenges that a CEO will have or a business owner will have. It's called the imposter syndrome. We know that, right? My struggle in business personally was every time there was a challenge in business, I would always have all of this self-blame. So I would say, see, if you had just gone to business school, right? As soon as this is a literal conversation, John. I would say to myself, if you just gone to business school, as soon as you graduate and walk across the stage, they would sprinkle that pixie dust stuff over your head and you would know how to hire employees. You know what I mean? I just knew that I was the problem because I didn't do that. And then I remember, I believe I read this book by the CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK or something like that. And he talked about how nobody knows how to hire employees until you hire them. Right? Until you hire that first one and it fails, and then you hire the second one, and then you learn, right, what to look for in people and what questions to ask, right? Yeah. You don't know what the heck you're doing. I was like, oh, I'm not an absolute dummy. You know what I mean? And then had the opportunity and just felt led to join. The company was based out of Saline, out of Chelsea, felt led to join them, family owned operation. And all of my training before, the reason I said I was a little different is because I had studied, I called myself more of a theoretician, right? I had studied all these different theoretical models related to business, read every book that I could, good to great, and had spent time, for instance, being trained on open book management or Little Giants over at Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Ari, spent time, Ari, their company there, for example, has this one part of their business that is Zingerman's mail order, where people from all around the country will order these products over the holiday season and they'll spend like $70 for fruitcake, right? Yeah. And so, but that system at the time, this would have been in the late teens, they were running, about $15 million a year. They made the last $7 million a year in the last 6 weeks of the year. Oof. And the only way they were able to do that is because in that company, and this is just public information, right? In that company, they had the Toyota production system in place. So Kanbans and all of these different things that Toyota popularized for manufacturing, they had adapted it and adopted it for mail order. So I spend time in this and I understand this, right? I'm reading all the books on it. Why? I don't know. Well, what ends up happening is when I moved to this company, we would, to install one thing, and what we would do is we would turn your window into an iPad, right? And so it would just be this amazing product where you would walk by the window from the outside and it would come to life. Well, we would send about 20 pieces, to the client site. But there was no system of tracking when I walked in the door. And so optimized their operations first. And the owner said, I need you to then go from there and to take over the sales and marketing team. Around that same time, he got sick. He had a heart issue and a back issue, both required surgery, and dove into that. They had plateaued for the past 7 years, and then they started to grow by about 20% clip per year. And he said, and then there were these internal challenges like, look, take over the CEO role, prepare us for sale, right? But my journey before that wasn't like I came up through the ranks, right? Yeah. As I say, a theoretician, I'd read every book, I understand, in principle, just about everything related to business. For instance, when I left the company before becoming a chair, my default was I have to go back and learn some more.
Oh.
So Harvard Business School has a program where you could take classes online without being fully enrolled. So I go and take accounting and finance, statistics and economics all together, John. Now, nobody told me, and they should have. I should blame you, right? Nobody told me. Don't take these when you're over the age of 50.
Don't ever take them.
And that's what it is right there. Don't ever take them, right? No, all together.
Yeah.
And I'm getting whooped upside the brain, right? But again, there's something interesting. We're going back to this imposter syndrome. This negative conversation comes back. I'm thinking, this is hard, right? This is hard. Other people are doing this, and they're doing this while working. And I'd already left my company. And this is what ended up happening. We ended up having a study cohort who agreed to get together Sunday afternoon via Zoom from all around the country and study. There was only one person in the entire group who was still working. Everybody had taken time off for this.
Yeah.
Right. And she was a genius, so she didn't count. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Right. But there's this language that I had about myself and my lack of skill or lack of knowing or just some shortcoming, some pattern that I always dealt with along the way. Yeah. And that really, it cleared up when I started spending time with other CEOs. And I'm like, oh, this is common. You know, this is common. Yeah. You may know for sure. Like for instance, one of the Vistage members, they run they do chemical plating. So they will plate metal, and like about 60% of all the brake rotors in the country are plated with their chemicals so that they don't corrode, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, plating. But your sales and marketing is just like, it's horrible. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you don't, and I know how sales is, how marketing is supposed to then lead to sales. And so I'm like, okay, we all have our struggles, right? We all have our challenges. And so that journey helped me to when I sit down with a CEO and I hear, because as a coach, one of the primary skill is listening. Yeah. And I can hear, okay, you're questioning this decision. And why are you questioning? Oh, you're questioning it based upon something bad that happened in the past, Mm-hmm. So my journey has definitely been, it's been a roundabout way of getting here. Yeah. But I've definitely found my unique space because I've struggled with some of this is what I like to say. I was leading the company in the middle of the pandemic. Right. Oof, yeah. And so when you wake up in the pandemic, and for me, I was also leading the sales team, and I said, okay, I've got to pull some levers because we have to sell 3 systems this week or the owner's sons will not be able to pay their mortgage. So for an average employee, right, to feel the weight of the pandemic is one thing. You got to take care of your family. Yeah. But for an executive, for a CEO, it's not just you, but you're worried about everybody that works, inside your organization. I've sat in that seat and I felt that pain and that consternation. Of course, we ended up turning things around. We came up with a sales and marketing plan that made that year 2020 and going into 2021 our best 2 years in the company's history. But those types of things you only find out when you're in challenges, right? When you're in the stress, when you're uncomfortable. So even now, with tariffs and all of these other things, that's the thing that causes growth. And I also parallel it to sports, right? If you're going to get bigger biceps and big muscles, that only comes from resistance. It only comes from challenge. And when you are being challenged and you have to think of a different way of doing things, this is why we're in those seats. This is why you're in that seat, because a different way will come out of you.
Yeah. And I think there's one thing that, again, I'm hearing the recurring thing, like you said, the imposter syndrome, that we carry, so many of us carry that weight of not good enough or whatever it might be, because again, from our childhood and
that's right.
Right. And I certainly know, obviously, your childhood was even less less than ideal than most people.
Absolutely. That's right.
And if you're open to that, I would love to.
Absolutely.
But, that's what makes us voracious readers or hunters or whatever, to get better because we think we've got to do better.
Yes.
What's interesting is, here you say, wait, I don't have to know. So now most people think you're the Vistage chair. Are you supposed to have all the answers?
That's right. That's right.
No. Yes, we do have it here. Bob Holland has a lot of the answers.
Bob Holland has a lot. Let's be honest.
There's no
that's
question.
Right. That's right.
But to me, the word coach
Come on.
is different than consultant. Is
That's
different
right.
than, a coach is simply asking questions and making sure
100%.
that we're making the right decision.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you have to have the answer. So if I'm hoping that you're walking into this and I'm hearing you say it, that you're not putting that pressure on yourself to say, I have to have all these answers for these CEOs. No, collectively as a group, our job is to help them.
Absolutely right.
But not that pressure of having, and that was a big turning point for me too.
And so that also, I think my time in the CEO suite, it prepared me for that, because I came to this conclusion. I kind of cheat the phrase, right? I have all the answers. They're all around me is really what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't have all the answers, but I know how to get the answers, right? I had, at the time, I had an executive coach, right? I had 3 or 4 other people in the network that I could call. I can get the answers. And it's way different. It's even more so now, right? Because I've got a broad network here in Vistage of Michigan. We have what we call our trusted advisors. Heck, now we've got some AI that'll direct us in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. That realization, and that's my style. I had someone recently that was interviewing to be a part of the group, and he just not ready quite yet, right? Just a little young in their leadership journey and all of that. And he said, the problem is, Pete, I don't hear you telling me the answers. And I told him, I said, number one, you will never hear me give you the answer, because if I'm not mistaken, Adam told God, it was that woman you gave me. He blamed God, right? So there's no way you're going to have that issue come to me. I'm going to give you an answer. You go back and fail, and you're going to blame me. That's not happening. That is never going to happen. However, I'm going to ask you enough questions to make sure you've looked at both sides of the problem, right? When you talk about this, I'm going to ask you specifically, why did you do that, right? What could you have done, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're going to come up with the solution after you fully thought both sides, completely out. So I reject the idea that I'm an advisor, right?
Yeah.
I don't have that experience. I'm not Ken Blanchard or Bob Holland, you know what I mean? But bring a whole bunch of value, because most executives and most CEOs that we work with, they have a strong inclination about their business and the way that it should go. You just need sometimes just to deal with the internal questioning, the internal second guessing is what you need to do.
Yeah. I think the other part too that would be helpful for people listening is those that are in that CEO role, the owner role, right? I mean, most of the time they're the ones that are supposed to have the answer, right?
That's right.
Whether right, wrong, or indifferent, that is what comes with the territory.
That's it.
And again, most of us feel alone. That's right. Again, I had a business partner in the past. I still felt alone because neither one of us knew what the hell we were doing. So how am I going to turn to him and say, what should I do? Right? So, I think it took me a long time to me not beat myself up if no one knows what the hell they're doing, right? Not no one, it's not the right thing, but
that's right.
Most everyone, they're doing this for the first time.
That's right. Well, what? I had that very thought recently. I was in a local grocery store. I won't say the name. I don't want to be negative about them. But their POS system is less than ideal. Let's say that. It's like I dropped the whatever I was buying. We'll say it was something healthy. I bought the water, and I dropped it on the scanner. Before it registered, it made me go back and input my something number and all of that. And I was like, man, this is a less than ideal way of doing this. And here's what the thought came to me. That's because their competitors are not sharing the best way to do this.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Walmart has probably got it down pat. We can get you in and out in 37 and a half seconds. The credit card processing is less than a half a second. Yeah. They've got it down. But it's not like they're sharing that information with everybody else.
Right.
And so in business, you're constantly developing things from scratch. And think about that. That's everything. You're developing everything from scratch. You may know exactly how to do, the main thing that you do, your operations, but you're developing a marketing plan from scratch. I was saying this to someone about marketing and advertising. There's the art and science of it.
Yeah, right.
The science is when you have a marketing plan, it needs to kick out this many leads to the sales team, right?
Yeah.
This to me is the science. I need numbers.
Yeah.
The art side of it is what colors are going to work with the public, what words are going to work, and there's some science as it relates to that, and ad copy and all that. But here's the to your point, everybody's got to figure this out from scratch.
Yeah.
Business is hard. It is really hard. Because whatever industry you're in, you're figuring out from scratch. And if you've got competitors, you have to figure out how to differentiate. It is incredibly, incredibly hard. And so this is why I guess my respect for CEOs and business owners is just through the roof, because nobody. It's not as if you can go online. This is how you plant you plant tomatoes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything is just from scratch, and everything has to be figured out.
Well, yeah, and again, like you said, there's books everywhere on everything,
Absolutely.
but not a single one is going to build a business and do everything, and it is tailored to that specific industry.
That's
or
right.
whatever might hit them. So, it's one thing to have knowledge of potentially what to do. There's a gut.
That's right.
Looking at other options, because we also, I think, which I believe is of true value of not just a Vistage chair,
Yes.
but Vistage members, is just looking at it from a different angle.
Come on, that's it.
Right?
Absolutely right.
Because sometimes we're stuck, we're frozen in indecision. Most times, like whenever, it's one thing that's great, that's the issue organizer that we do whenever we're bringing something to the group in a confidential forum, which is great. It kind of helps. You work through what's the issue,
That's right.
what's the impact,
That's right.
what's the priority, like all these things. And by the time you're finished, you almost like figure out you're like, oh, I think I know what I should do. However,
Yes.
then when you go into the group and you're like, well, what because one of the questions is, well, which direction do you plan on going?
Yes.
And you say it, and then everyone else punches holes into it like mad. So
100%. I love it.
So it's
I love
that great, like, because you're only acting on what you know.
That's right.
You're not thinking about what's possible because you're so deep in it that you can't
Yes.
see outside.
And that's, I appreciate what you're sharing, and we call it that diversity in the group. So you have companies, and here in Vistage in Michigan, one of the guys runs like one of Warren Buffett's holding companies, right? You know what I mean? And so you will have all of this knowledge and all of that, but all of these different industries, right? In confidential, non-competitive environment. And so when you say certain things, other people hear it from their vantage point, and they're asking you questions like, oh, I'd never thought of that, right? And I remember I asked someone recently, I said, why did you hire that person? Because it hadn't worked out. And he was like, oh, well, nobody ever asked me that. You know what I mean? But let you go back and think about, why'd you hire that person? Now, that executive doesn't know my feelings. I think that they hired that person because the person had a particular title.
Yeah.
Right. Or a particular level of education, experience, and all that. And that there was some value in that, right, to them. But from a gut, if I were to go back and ask again, what would your gut say to you? You're kind of like, he's not a scraper. He doesn't scrap. You know what I mean? I needed somebody that was really a hustler. I hired a title. You know what I mean?
Didn't hire based on,
come on,
the culture of the company.
Culture of the company. We're entrepreneur, which is something that has happened, right? If you're an entrepreneurial minded company, right, bringing somebody out of that corporate space to work in your space may not be an ideal fit. Right. You hope it will, but you got to learn from that, right? And so, it's so again, being able to be challenged in a group, as you mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. Because I can remember one of the first times I walked in the Vistage group, and you can always hear there's a level of maturity in terms of the CEO of business owner, and I don't necessarily mean age, right? Mm-hmm. But when I hear business owners, there was somebody that I was reaching out to. I was referred to someone and reaching out to them because they had interest in Vistage. I can tell in the first conversation it was not a fit, right? They said, well, what's your greatest challenge? Oh, these people are great. Blah, blah, blah. He's complaining about his people. Mm-hmm. Well, why are those people there? Because you brought them in, right? Yeah. Why haven't you developed them? right?
Yeah.
What is it what is it about you that you want these people to stay at this level? What is that? You know what I mean? And so you can just hear it if you're around other executives enough. You can hear the areas that they need to be, we'll say these areas that they need to be strengthened in, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're in Vistage, that challenge is going to come directly to you. Somebody's going to ask you directly. I remember one of the questions I asked, so why haven't you trained those people, trained them up over the years if they've been with you for so long, right? And the person had no answer, And I believe as a CEO, not everything is your fault, but it is your responsibility, And so, anyway, I'm just droning on the topic of executives, which I love, but who at times we do need to.
Most executives, because either you're reporting into someone into corporate structure, or
that's right.
Or listen, we can all be really good bullshit artists, right?
Yes,
I mean, again, because most time we've got to make sure most people think we've got to look like we have the answers in front of our people. We can't look like we're weak, or what you keep on going with whatever face we put on. So if no one's calling BS on you,
that's it.
You're going to continue to go like the same thing. When someone's like, well, boy, did you train him up? Oh, it's my fault? No, the hell, no. There's no way this is going to work.
That's right.
But that's where, again, the right people just sniff that out. And like, there's no wiggle, Go
and
help.
it's so interesting. Maybe it's just been this year, but I've had several conversations with executives, who expressed an interest. And what's your greatest barrier to going to the next level? Oh, my people, they're just... Well, we know that people are critical to the growth of every company, but when you frame it in such a way, like, if I didn't have these darn people, I get it. Okay, but they're there because of you. The training program you have in place is directly your responsibility. It's been a year for me hearing that for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think that's helping shift that perspective, right? I think is like, again, it's like, if it wasn't for customers, boy, business would be easy.
That's right.
If it wasn't for people, business would be easy, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And the thing about it is and that to me is that there's a level of self-awareness that good CEOs have. I'll never forget, I think it was Marshall Goldsmith, who's a world famous coach. The name of I believe his best-selling book was "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." Mm-hmm. Right? And that means as an executive, you have to continue to grow. You have to continue to improve. It's incumbent. Your growth is directly related to the growth of the organization as a whole. And he talked about, I forget the CEO, forgive me, I believe it was one of the CEOs of Ford. If I remember right, one of the CEOs of Ford came from Boeing at a time.
Oh, yeah. Mullally.
And the name will come to us in a minute, right?
Mullally,
thank you. So he had a coaching session with Mullally, and he said, I talked to him, I gave him 12 different things to do, right? And he came back a year later, had done all 12 of them. And that was the end of our coaching engagement, right? Because he had those things he needed to work on. He worked on them, right? Yeah. And so, but that is just, it's so critical. You don't have to be a Mullally, but you do have to be a human with some desire to grow and improve. Yeah. And when you hear something, it should just resonate in you like, okay, this is where I need to go. This is what I need to do. I need someone surrounding me who will tell me the truth about me, who will challenge me, and I want to be challenged. Yep. That's the other side. No. That's the other side.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it worthwhile.
It does.
Sometimes we love taking on a challenge, but each time they got to want it. You can't want it more than them.
That's right. That's right. And that's a challenge. And challenge, and you mentioned this earlier, I think the interesting thing about my life's journey is that, I was faced with multiple challenges coming up. My mother struggled with mental illness. And so what that meant was I was in and out of foster homes, in and out of foster care. I'd lived in about 13 different cities by the time I was 13 years old. And that meant that, I lived in Washington, D.C., and Shaker Heights, Ohio, Arlington, Virginia, Detroit. I just lived all over the place, right? And because of her mental illness, there were times we were homeless, we were without food, and all of that. So it dealt with challenges. And I just thought, okay, challenge is the way of life, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I mentioned when I talk about that mindset. Like, okay, there's something about me. You mentioned this as well, the way that you grow. When you grow up at that age and mom is here one day and then the next day you leave, there's a language that you develop. Oh, I must be the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I must be the problem. And so I carried this through life. Now, here's the interesting thing. I also believe this, that in the midst of challenge, we find our uniqueness, or what we would say in some marketing terms, our differentiator, right? And I believe that's the case in business. If you go through business and you survive a challenge, let's say it's COVID, let's say if the tariffs, right? You should not only be looking to survive, but you should be looking to thrive. What is my differentiator? What makes me different that allows me to survive and thrive? And I'll tell you my difference. I can remember being in Washington, D.C., because that's one of the places we moved. And we spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill, including in the Library of Congress.
Okay.
And so I was like trying to figure out, well, why did mom spend so much time in the Library of Congress? So a couple of years ago, I go back and I think I figured it out. There was a Catholic church right on Capitol Hill, and I think it was St. John's, and they had a program where they would feed the homeless. So I think mom was taking us down there to get food, right?
Yeah.
And then we would just spend time in the libraries. And I spent a lot of time when I was growing up in libraries. Libraries then were a little different than today. Today they got toys and all that kind of stuff. Then all they had were books, right? And I just developed this love for reading. The types of books that I gravitated towards were Encyclopedia Brown, Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, right? Yeah. And these mystery novels that require you to critically think a little bit, or at least remember stuff. Yeah. So now, through the years, this love of critical thinking, or this love of books rather, and this critical thinking piece has been a huge advantage, right? It's a huge advantage. We had, this was year before last, there was a group of about, we have a retreat, did you know, right? A retreat. Yeah. And we were doing a retreat on AI, and we had to do so much research on a couple of different businesses. And one of the guys like, Pete is AI, right? It was just the funniest thing, because this love of business, it ties directly into this love of reading. So now, in the midst of my challenges, my differentiator arises, which is reading. Reading absolutely everything, right? My unique ability, per se, is reading. And so when I sit down with an executive, I don't have to know everything, but I can probably give you 3 examples of how others have done it, right? Yeah. And even the memory piece, if you're going to read through, let's go back to a simplistic thing like Encyclopedia Brown. You got to remember what happened in the first chapter. So by the last chapter, you can put some pieces together. You know, one of my favorite board games was Clue, you know? Yeah. And so now when I sit down with an executive, it's like, well, like today I had a coaching session today, and I'm talking about utilization rate. Well, we didn't have to worry about utilization rate inside our company, but I'm explaining the principle of utilization rate. If the utilization rate of these 1099 contractors is below 80%, then that executive is worried that his team is not working hard enough. They become flight risks, right? Mm-hmm. And the person hears that, wow, I'd never heard of that, right? That's because I've read, I had these coaching sessions, read and remembered. So that becomes my superpower. My differentiator. And I believe that every business owner, every CEO has a superpower, has a differentiator. And those things are typically discovered or uncovered during challenging times, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, I know we're getting along in this episode here, because I would love to. And there was a reason to bring in the childhood part. Yes. Because in those hard times, I can't be in that chair for you. Right. That's right. But, in those hard times, in those things that we grow up as, that are negatives.
That's right.
Right?
Come on.
Wasn't fun as hell back then, I promise you. I bet.
It was a negative. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, there's the scars that we bring for the rest of our life, and how we have to prove ourselves and all that. But that is just like ADHD and all these other things, and dyslexia. That's again, they're considered handicaps of some sort or something, right? But they can become a superpower because of the overcoming of it.
Absolutely, 100%. And I know people that have used that in that way. For instance, I knew a real estate agent who was called the Michael Jordan of real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is he, in his one office building, he had a VA mortgage company and a conventional mortgage company downstairs and a title company downstairs. And upstairs, he had the regular real estate office, the foreclosure office, the rent-to-own office, and he spent time in all of them every day. And people would come around to his office from around the country to shadow him on a day. And I'm thinking, you're going to shadow him and get lost because you don't have ADD. He's got ADD. He's always at it, Yeah. But you're exactly right. And I think the critical thing, though, is finding this is also, if I don't want to, I hope I don't have the story incorrect, but Fred Smith, of course, who created FedEx, there was one of those type of CEOs, and I may be incorrect with him, so I don't want to put it on him. It was well known that one of those guys had like ADD, ADHD, and so that was a catalyst in the way that they created the business, right? I think Fred Smith, he developed that hub and spoke design in business school. But I remember reading about somebody and it's like, oh, well, it just made sense. This is how you came up with that. Your mind just works like that. But being channeled into an environment where you can utilize what looks like a deficiency in a positive way, I think if we can all find that space, and that's the hard thing, right? But if we can all find that space, then we end up being a gift to the planet.
You know what? You put it in way better terms. I was working on a close.
Yes.
To help bring home the gift that you are.
Come on, thank you.
But you just did it for me, right? You are a gift to the universe.
Thank you.
And I wish upon any entrepreneur or anyone on their journey to find someone like you to help them help find their path and figure out the right things. So what is, before I do, I forget.
Yes.
Do you have a good, how about that? Do you have a good mistake or good failure? No. Is there a mistake or failure or a miscue in your life that you could bring to light for the audience to help them potentially?
Yeah, I think number one, and this is going to I hope this doesn't sound like a sales pitch or anything at all, but number one for me, I think the biggest mistake or failure or misstep was not finding mentors earlier. Now, some of this was hard to do. Again, I mentioned how I bounced around from place to place and all of that kind of stuff. But because of my journey, I feel like I learned things slower, right? But if I had found a series of mentors earlier in my journey, then I think they would have helped me think through some of this self-doubt, right? And I mean, there have been great books about growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and I definitely have a growth mindset. But still, a mentor, and I've had some great ones, but if I had just found them a little earlier, right, on the journey. For instance, one would have told me, boy, you're big, go play some sports. You know what I'm saying? And that would have been a good thing to hear.
Yeah.
Because all I did was play sports in the neighborhood, and everybody now like, did you play sport? Really never had the chance to because I bounced around a lot, right? But that probably would have been one of the things. And then the explanation behind that is because it's going to build lifelong discipline, right? That will reward you for the rest of your life. There's certain lessons, and of course, I mentioned my mother never knew my father, right? So having that mentor father figure earlier would have been critical. So that I think would have been the thing that I'd wish I had or that missing.
Yeah, and I again, I could go into all kinds of theoretical things about, where you didn't have trust in many adults probably, right? So you figure I got to figure this out on my own. But the lesson for everyone else is you don't have to have a total bad situation. But I think the choice, what you're saying is choose to try to find someone. Because it's going to take you far longer to do it on your own, right? So
come on, 100%, absolutely right.
So awesome, just another gem. So many great things for everyone to hear here. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you that is in need?
Absolutely. Well, the simplest way to LinkedIn, just Pete Thomas or Pete@PeteThomas.com is the email address. And I want to thank you as well, right? Because not only you creating this podcast, this space for others to learn from, but because of the work that you've done. Obviously, when you stepped into Bloom Growth, right, something triggered, right? You saw there was another light bulb moment in your life that went on, and you saw the ability to help CEOs and business owners. So thank you for the work that you do as well.
Thanks, Pete. Much appreciated. A ball as expected.
Great. Excellent. I love it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap.
Thanks for tuning in to The Roll Call with John Glahn. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Remember, discovering your true role in life is a journey worth exploring each and every day. Until next time, keep defining your path and living your authentic self. This is John Glahn signing off.